Hey guys, Glenn Twiddle here. A little informal chat with a couple of my mates who I wanted to pick their brain on some of your guys' behalf. I've had questions about, many people who've seen the opportunity available within the whether you want to call it the Advanced Real Estate Agent Alliance or EXP Australia in general. Because the thing that Dan and I, that Chris and I, and Adrian Bo and I, we're all sort of a subset of that large corporate organisation. And certainly, the benefits of having that training part of what we're doing as that little thing within the thing, it has its own benefits. But we're really here to talk about from a principal licensee's perspective, because a lot of the salespeople just see it as a no-brainer. The fact that they get, an agent-owned company. With opportunities to have shares and a comm split that's almost hard, impossible to beat. Ownership in the company, training from people like Dan Nayland down below, like Chris Jansen here. My guest today, again, I'm honoured to be, counted as a reason some people have joined. Adrian Bo, Lisa B, my partner Naomi, and the list goes on of all of those reasons from a salesperson's perspective. It's why we've seen this thing as the fastest growing entity. You wouldn't really call it a brand because in many cases people are branding it themselves and because of its sheer agent-centric flexibility. But what we're here today to discuss is what does that mean to the bosses, to the principal licensees, to the incumbent players that historically, because I've been a principal licensee as well, us people who as business owners and principal licensees, we're the ones that historically have been the only ones that have been the beneficiary of mentoring a salesperson and then being paid for someone else's listing and selling. Because, for me, when I was a sales manager, I was rewarded with a 5% overrider on my sales team. When I was a principal licensee, then whatever profits left over is your overrider on your sales team in exchange for you recruiting them and training them and mentoring them and looking after them and all of those things. And sometimes you think, Jesus, there's not too much left over after the splits and the expenses are there. But that's what we're here to discuss today is what about us principals? And I haven't been a principal for some 12 years since becoming a coach. But I wanted to have a talk to the first two principals that joined EXP, so in the very early days. And so I wanted to introduce you to Dan Nayland, who owns a company up on the Sunshine Coast. I was first introduced to Dan when I saw him speak at ARIC. And this is at least 10 years ago, because it was while I was an agent and a principal licensee. I bought all the ARICs. I listened to the recordings, and Dan and I have been associates and colleagues and friends ever since. He's come to a bunch of our events, and I've had a lot of respect for him for a decade plus externally, and now I'm honoured to be as part of this organisation with Dan and Chris Jansen here from down in South Australia, who has been to events of ours historically and has gone and taken that information and gone and built an amazing business within the Harcourts brand. So, but again, now let's have a chat. Now I've introduced you guys. I sort of want to throw to your guys' brains and maybe we just have a bit of an informal discussion. And, starting with you, Chris, if you could sort of give us, because again, my bio of you guys is certainly not, I wasn't with you guys every step of the way, even though we've known each other for some time. So give us a little background, Chris. We'll start with yourself on your background, what brought you here, and then what maybe are some of the highlights that have led to where you're at right now, kind of within a new organisation, relatively speaking.
Yeah, sure, mate. I mean, I guess it probably started for me going back nearly 2 years ago from a recruitment perspective. My business partner at the time and I, just pretty youthful. We wanted to take over a certain section of South Australia, predominantly the northeastern section. But yeah, over the last 2 years, I just started finding a bit of a common denominator coming into the mix of things with recruitment objections from other agencies and different models. And so for me, I found it, we had great success with mentoring guys and girls. So yeah, like you said, GT, they'd come in under your wing, you'd mentor them for 15 to 18 months, and then eventually they can go out on their own. We had some really good success stories, and we had some stuff that just I guess, unfolded not ideally.
So,
but yeah, it was
so
more so
just
around.
when you say that, let me just go to that. So when you say
Yeah.
you brought them in, mentored them, held their hand, but when you say go out on their own, do you mean
Yeah.
within your office now they're a salesperson on their own, or do you mean
Yeah.
leaving your organisation to set up in competition?
Yeah, I mean, there's always that risk. Absolutely, we've had some great internal success with guys and girls that
Okay,
have remained with the business, but
right.
there was always that mentality or concern, I guess, as a business owner, that some of your greatest mentorship people will eventually leave you.
Well,
And
as we all did, and we can't hang them for that because you did it, Chris. I did it.
yeah,
Dan did it. I find that one a tough one when people are really cranky if their salespeople leave, because
yeah,
we all decided to be in a business of our own. So if we don't provide an environment that they can feel like they are in master of their own ship in our environment, or like you did, you bought into your company, didn't you, mate? You became a partner.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was 3 years ago, and I was following the domino effect, I guess, the traditional model of, when you become a good, successful selling agent, this is the next progression in your life as such. But yeah, it was more so the objections I was getting recruitment wise, and I've just found over the last sort of year and a half, recruitment and getting good, credible salespeople is really, really hard. Adelaide is a small place; it's all about social proofing. And unless you can social proof something, then you won't get buying. But I started seeing some models out there, and I thought I've got to immerse myself into these objections why I can't get salespeople, because if I can't overcome the objection, I'm not aware of what they're looking into, then I'm already on the back foot. So the more and more I looked into different models, I could see what was happening overseas, and then eventually the inception on our shores, predominantly in the eastern seaboard. And as we all know, Adelaide's a few years behind what all the other states traditionally do. And
In
I
this
saw
case,
this
mate,
and
it
I
was
thought, geez,
weeks. No, we caught you
yeah,
weeks after we launched,
yeah,
because of our mutual friend Bjorn, who kind of introduced you and I in this capacity. But
yeah.
yeah, it certainly wasn't a case of following you. In fact, in many ways, you guys are leading the way, which is wonderful to see.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things, mate, is, I looked at this model and I thought, geez, I can't compete with this as a business owner. Why would I want it to wait for it to hit and rock our market in the months and years to come, when I can ride the wave right at the beginning right now and be at the forefront of creating something that is really a huge point of difference that the market hasn't seen here? And I thought, I want that. I want to be part of
Excellent.
that.
And so, Dan, my intro would have grossly undersold your successes. But if you want to give us, give us the highlight reel that I missed out on. Maybe even starting at ARIC and that invite. That must have been, mate. That is an honour that I have not even enjoyed. And mate, I pay credit to anyone who has got that invite, because it really does mean you're the cream of the crop and you're the best that this country's got to offer. So yeah, what did I miss out of the CV, mate?
Oh, geez, mate. I don't know how. You probably don't have enough time, maybe, for me to finish talking about myself, But look, you're only as good as your last sale, I think. But yeah, look, I wasn't an instant success like a lot of these guys that you see on the stage. I spent 10 years in the business. I was a tradesman that had to reinvent myself, and I spent 10 years doing that. And I had the benefit of good leadership to help me do that, and yeah, certainly towards the peak of my selling career, before I went into business ownership, I won a lot of awards, in Queensland for my sales performance, and I saw that. I always saw that as the goal I had to achieve before I felt I was worthy to lead other people. And then from that point on, I went on into business ownership, which you always hear, but you don't really realise until you go into it that it's a completely different role. And look, I often say to people, if the training was around and the systems was around back when I was a sales agent that are around now, I may never have gone into business ownership. I possibly would have developed that king team around myself and stuck to that and done equally well. But we went into business ownership and all the things that come with that, and And not long after that, 24 months after that, we had that delightful thing that come along called the GFC. And that was great fun for new business owners. That was terrific.
Well, it is a baptism of fire. You know, if you survive through that with profitably and you make it through alive as you did and went on to thrive for the next decade, mate, it says something that it was built on the right foundation.
Yeah, well, we grew the business to 3 offices, which we had we still have. We're right in the process at the moment of closing one down. But we run a very big holiday rent roll up here in Noosa, as well as our sales and permanent management business. But so I've probably had the benefit of seeing a lot of change in the industry over nearly 30 years. Can benefit from that. So and the biggest reason I think for me with that EXP's become of such strong interest is because some of the things that Chris said I really relate to, that recruiting side of things. I really do feel that as EXP expands across the nation, that it's going to be very, very difficult from a competitive perspective to recruit. I think it's very, very appealing to salespeople. And I wanted to get on board with and feel that I'm in touch with the change that's likely to come to our industry. I think our industry's been under pressure for some time. I've watched it. I've watched how difficult it's become to get into, how difficult it's become to be a real estate principal. Everyone seems to have their hand in your pocket these days. It's just become so more and more complex and so more and more litigious and complicated to do. And it does get to a point where as a good selling agent or principal, you can come to a point where you say, well, hang on a minute, I don't really need to be doing all this, it's not, is it really worth it, And I think with the EXP model, because they're not involved with rent rolls, there is real opportunity for principals who are at that point where they can say, you know what, gee, I could keep my successful business going with my rent rolls going. I could grow my team and my brand a little bit more and let them out under the EXP and be powered by EXP and possibly just rent space back to them or rent the database back to them or the brand back to them. And at the end of the day, by the time you wipe out all the expenses and the costs and the labour and all the taxes, you don't come out very far removed from a net position that you're getting out of a sales force now, particularly in a regional market like Noosa. So a little bit of growth required, certainly, but by the time you build your own team a bit bigger in your own organisation and potentially have a bigger EXP team out across the nation, the net position's not that different and probably a lot more enjoyable and back to the things you enjoy doing as a real estate principal,
Yeah, and certainly, Dan, when you and I did the numbers and we sort of had many discussions about that, and I love your analytical brain because it certainly complements mine, which is kind of not that. I love it. And so I don't mean it adds to it. I mean, it helps make up for my lack thereof. And it was wonderful to sort of see, if you factor in, especially for these first couple of years, while the curve of EXP growth is like that, it doesn't take too much growth within your team to more than make up for the fact that, if there's a curve of growth going that way and a curve of growth going that way, if the slice is a little bit less on the one that's going that way, it's going to be net, ahead to be a part of that curve. What you would have heard there, Chris? Oh, sorry, Dan, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say the key to this model is the cut in the expenses. That's the key. The key to it is the expenses, whether it be wages or taxes or payroll tax or all your consumables, all the licensing fees and things. When you really look at it, that's the key. The amount that you can cut your expenses and the net position you can get back to, it's just amazing when you really have a look how much goes out the door to everybody else.
Yeah, I had a chat with both Michael Spillane and David Beard over the last couple of months, and it's amazing how we were having these discussions in the early 2000s about how incredibly inefficient it is I drove past with Michael a strip of shops at Carina there, and there was like a Remax, then a hairdresser, then an IGA, then a Rain and Horn, then another thing, and there was like 10 offices, all separated by a hairdresser, a butcher, a baker, and a candlestick maker. But every second or third or fourth shop, 10 offices, were all real estate agents. And you think, where's the efficiency there? They've all got a realestate.com account. They've all got a secretary. They've all got a trust account. They've all got all these expenses. If they just had one big office with one expense, they'd be 10 times the efficiency. And so it's funny that, some 20 years later, that's exactly the machine that's been built to take advantage of those, I suppose, economies of scale, you'd call it. So, Chris, is that how did that factor in, into your decision as far as, because you talked about EXP being removing the impediment to recruiting, because I know how tough it is. I used to interview them, recruit them, try and keep them. We used to be a ratio of about 5 to 1, that we would start 5 on our little program to keep 1. So I'd start 5 every quarter, maybe 10, in the hopes of keeping 2. And we etched out a sales team of 20 by that attrition. And we were number 1 in the Brisbane CBD by a country mile. But boy, oh boy, was it a war to get there. But again, if that was the first impediment, recruiting ease of salespeople, what will be your commentary on your experience of EXP with regards to business ownership along the lines of what Dan said and expenses?
Oh, look, no question about it. The line between profit and pain is, very, very minimal. Like, it's tight, your margins. From a sales business point of view, don't get me wrong. Look, there's 2 principles I know that are out in that world. There's the principal who loves to list and sell, writes big numbers, likes being up, name above the door. It's kind of the me show. And in those businesses, generally your attrition and turnover is quite high because they're writing such a volume of business. It can be often very difficult to, nurture people that want to write, 250 GCI that are your bread and butter. Then there's the principles in our marketplace that they just have big rent rolls and they love their property management more so than their sales business. And for me, I kind of was a blend between the both. I didn't want to be on the stage. I didn't want my name on the door. It wasn't about me. But I kind of got to a stage where I was pillar to post. My GCI was affected because I was doing operations, recruiting, trying to run property management. I was doing BDM. And it just got to a point that when COVID actually hit and I had some time to actually pause and be at home and be more present, I went, I've been unhappy for quite a long time now, just being a jack of all trade, but a master of none. And it kind of was at the time we were talking about this model. And look, my foundations always have been, and I'm sure it's the same for you, Dan, we just love to list and sell and bring sellers and buyers together and do deals. The fact that we can get the best deal through XP to do this, I can still mentor and coach and nurture people, but by no means in my situation, I'm employing you and I'm paying you payroll taxes and your superannuation and whatnot. I'll guide you, but I'm not here to be a daddy daycare centre and tell you what time you have to be in the office and give me a call if you're sick. But if you need me to come to a listing presentation or close a deal with you, I'll do that for you. But also on the flip side,
like the best of both worlds. I love it. You get you get all the good stuff of leadership and mentorship and none of the crap.
Exactly. And then on the other side, as Dan said, I can still build a rent roll business and keep it separate. Like it's mine. It's my asset. I'm not. And this was the other thing. I looked at other models that outside of EXP I could have jumped into, but they wanted 50% stakeholding in the rent roll business. And I went, well, hang on. If I'm the legwork and I'm the grunt, the mule on the ground here, why would I give away 50% when I can kind of do it my way, plus get all the goods and the fruits of selling, coaching and mentoring people, but not employing them under a sales parameter?
And Dan, I want to ask you about this because you and I spoke about so many things, but would the fact about the rent roll growth potential, given that we've seen the fastest growing salesperson influx into EXP that I've ever seen in my 20 years of real estate, did you envisage that as helping to build your rental part of your business? Because in fact, most of these salespeople don't have business ownership or rent roll growth aspirations. So you'll be able to incentivize them, I'm sure, Dan, into you making sure they're happy to help grow your rent roll. And the wonderful thing is EXP sort of doesn't have their hand in the pie nor want to for any part of that.
Well, in actual fact, the model actually creates a greater opportunity to do that, because under a standard model, if you have to house agents, you might have whatever number local agents in your region, whether it be 10, 20 or 30. But, once you build a whole series of agents underneath your mentorship with EXP, they could be, spread out over a much vaster geographical area. And often areas that are probably more lucrative for rentals. Like Noosa is a marketplace where permanent rental is very hard to grow because the market is so tight. But down the rest of the Sunshine Coast, it's there's a lot of new development down there now. Failing going down there and opening an office and doing everything else that's normal to do, it's very hard for me to grow my rent roll in that region. But under EXP, with agents under my mentorship down there, they're incentivized to refer business to us like they would anyone else. So I actually see it as an opportunity to grow my rent roll a lot broader than I could under a standard business model.
So I definitely, as business owners, that's all three of us, and that's our viewers watching this. These are the guys who are, we've been in business. We understand numbers. We're not going to be put off by, the hard conversations. And, Dan, you brought into EXP. So I do want to talk about the remuneration for growing a team and how that's so unique to real estate here in this country, at least, and, innovative globally now. You recruited in very early time, someone who works literally a competitor of yours. Tell us about that.
Yeah.
How often would that have happened historically, if at all, and how you see the benefits of that team growth and the unique structure of remuneration that the viewers, I'm sure, have seen an overview of EXP. Tell us your take on that opportunity and how that fits in its own unique way.
Look, it's a transition, is how I see it. At this early stage, I think it's important to remember we're at the grassroots of this thing, and this thing is backed by a multi national company from America. It's got enormous amount of infrastructure and support behind it. It's going to go. It's not like the other things that have been around. And it's attracting people who have got real business brains into it. For me, I'm in a transition where I'm growing my business outside my core area at the moment until a time in the very near future, I can convert all my salespeople into it. Because as a business owner right now, it's not viable for me to convert all my sales agents to it right now. So I'm happily growing my EXP business, and in a very short period of time, then I'll convert my whole business into EXP. And look, that's one of the beauties I've found of this business, is that they understand that business isn't simple. We can't just unravel an old business model and go straight down the path of a new one. That's some people might be willing to do that, but I'm afraid I'm a little bit more conservative than that. But I have whispered in the ear of a few of my salespeople. They know what's coming, but it'll come when it's the right time, and when it's the right time for me. But you have to have an appetite to build a bit if you want that sort of level of income. Like, eventually I see myself with over 200 agents under my mentorship and the mentorship of the team that I'm building, to make it worthwhile to me and the people that I'm involved with in my team. So, that's going to take some doing. It's going to take some commitment, like anything that's worthwhile doing. But it is quite a commitment, but it's a different business model to adopt, and it's just going to take some transition. But I think one of the things that most principals can sort of relate to, and one of the main reasons why I'm going strongly down this path very quickly, is that I think the industry's changed dramatically, and I think everyone's feeling it. I think salespeople are feeling it, and I think principals are feeling it. The days when I started, the principal supplied you with everything. You were really grateful for that opportunity. He mentored you. He supplied everything you needed for you to make an income for your family. And you appreciated that, and you were happy to give over your share of the fee for what the risk and the resources he supplied.
And back in those days, let's put some context around that. Back in those days, at least when I started, perhaps it's similar in your day, Dan. I know you have more experience than me. I'm aware of that. But 20 years ago, it was 60-40 in favour of the principal was standard. So I was rewarded for my commission-only activities with 40%. And what you're saying was true. They would give you, in my case, I didn't get much more than maybe some agent. I got a phone, I got a script, I got a listing presentation. I got those as tools, and I got told, go your hardest. So I was taught how to do a listing, and then I was told, go your hardest. But it was 60-40. And now, if you're not getting 50-50, 60-40 in favor of the agent, then you're not even in the playing field. So I'm assuming, how was it years before that, Dan? Was it ever less than 60-40?
No, it was the same. It was 40%, and you'd get a phone book thrown at you and a council records, and off you go. And it was make or break. Baptism of fire, which maybe I think was which I think might have been a good idea, to be honest, at the time. But it certainly cut the wheat from the chaff. But you're right. You are now. It's a much different split, and of course that makes it harder and harder for principals. There's greater expectations on what they provide on a smaller margin, because all these things are available on the internet and training's available very freely and all those things, salespeople feel, well, gee, what am I getting that I can't get elsewhere? And and principals are saying, well, Jesus, there's not much left at the end of this. What's in it for me? And you can't blame them. So you've really got a position where both salespeople and principals are both unhappy with the situation, and it's not really getting any better.
Dan, when you say that, I tell you, mate, I put up a post in React the other day, our Facebook group, over 5,000 real estate agent members, and it was a cat that was all fluffy and healthy looking, and then there was a cat that was shaved and looked all skinny and starving. And so the point was, both principals and agents thought that it was appropriate that the big fluffy one is the gross commission and the little skinny one with nothing left is what's left over for the agent. And then all the principal licensees went, it's exactly the same. This is the big, and here's what's left over for the boss. Like what you just said, Dan, resonated so much. Like both sides of the equation were cranky at the status quo.
And there is someone to blame. The person to blame for this is the vendors, because they haven't paid more than 2.5% plus GST for a long, long time.
I've got to stick up for the vendors, Dan. Properties were 200 grand then, now they're $1 million. Hey? As properties tripled, so too did our dollars in our pocket. So I think we've stayed ahead of the CPI increase.
Well, you got me there, but the point is that no one's happy, and the thing I see in this EXP model is that the agent's happy because they're getting a much greater degree of the fee. The principal, if he's got enough people under him, he's making an earn and willing to impart his knowledge and foster those people and grow the business. In Queensland at least, they recently brought in where you've got to earn a minimum of 60K to get and have a history to get into the industry, and you must have a salary.
Yeah, that's most states.
Well, that really changed real estate for Queensland. Yeah. So that's made it harder to recruit. Well, I think this model makes it easier again to recruit. So I just think everyone's more moving in the same direction, and it's going to make for a lot more enjoyable environment, a lot more enjoyable relationship between principals and salespeople, and better retention and all those things. So I can see why, if I'm not involved in it, I can see why it might take off, around me and I could potentially lose staff to it. I think that can happen.
Well, that's what Chris was saying is that he said to me, and I was really, he worded it way better than I'm about to, but it really resonated when he said that, because Chris, you brought across Mike Lowry. I love his name, Mike Lowry, right out of Bad Boys. And tell us the story about Mike and what you said to him from a recruiting perspective, and how long you'd known him, attempting to bring him into your organisation, and how Marcus brought in Mike Lowry.
Yeah, well, it kind of all. I mean, look, Bjorn and I had known each other 10 plus years, and I was trying to get him overboard, recruiting him into our banner, and Bjorn was on an incredible deal, and I remember saying to him, mate, I can't match that. Like, that's so good. But if it's about the deal, stay with the deal. But if you want to try and grow an asset, then we can help you out with that side of things. But it's really funny.
And even that wasn't enough to get him in until this kind of thing. Yeah.
No, I'd been peppering him for a long time. And then obviously Bjorn and Mike became really close friends. And then Bjorn called on to this. And obviously Mike, So, one of the things I think, when I looked at this myself, I reevaluated things, and I thought, being under any banner, are we loyal to the banner, or are we loyal to the people under that banner as such? And I was more loyal to the people, because I came from a great brand. I love the brand and think really highly of it, but I was more loyal to the relationships within that brand, more so than the value that it was adding to me. And when I looked at things and discussing it with other people, I said, look, there's 5 values that I'm assessing as part of making this decision myself. If I go with EXP, what does it mean for my client? Are they dealing with me, the brand I'm under now, EXP? Does it really matter? Do they want Chris Jansen? And speaking with every client as part of this transition, it's like, do we get the same fruits? We don't care what brand it's under or banner, as long as it's you that's driving the ship. Cool. So from a client's perspective, it was fine. The second thing was about, how does the brand add value to the individual within the brand? And I thought to myself, well, most of the stuff I'm doing myself now at the level I'm at, I'm innovating and implementing myself. So the value that I get is more so my own brand than the brand I was within. The third thing that I looked at was the systems and the technology, and looking at EXP, all the cloud-based stuff, the EXP world. Probably the biggest thing I get talking to some people in the industry is very skeptical. Oh, it sounds too good to be true, or do you actually get any support? Because if they're only taking that small portion of the pie, and it's very easy for someone on the outside to look in and be very skeptical to that regard. But having integrated over a period of time myself, I can tell you I get the equivalent, the same support that I got formerly, if not more. And one of the values that I loved about EXP that really resonated with me, GT, was agile. Being agile, they will adapt. They'll move on things quickly. I'm not waiting on a state office or a national office. It's like, if this guy needs this, move and make it happen. It doesn't take weeks, within a day. Like today I had emails from the national office at 7 a.m. The girls were contacting me about stuff. Phenomenal. So, the systems where I was at, we pretty much had bolted everything onto the systems we got within the brand. And this is where our subscriptions just went through the roof. And it got to a point where I said, under the banner that I was in, was, if you don't open the floodgates and just let everyone bolt into your system, it's so far behind, you might as well shut it down, because we're using the other stuff anyway. So the fact that we had all these subscriptions for a real super low cost compared to what I was looking at monthly that I was paying as a business owner versus this, like, it was daylight. So the systems, the fourth thing I based my value decision on was retention of staff. And I think that sort of flows back into point one. If you're adding value to Glenn Twiddle's brand and name, or Chris Jansen's brand and name, retention takes care of itself, because sales guys, it's about them. It's all about them. And I get that. Like, they work bloody hard 7 days a week. They're on call 24/7. So you've got to make it about them. And the model that I was under, there was just no option to do that for the guys and girls, to make it about their name. And I think, to a certain degree, if you're 0 to 2 years, the model I came from has great leverage and backing to help you. But when you become established in a household name and you're getting called into doors and you're not competing because you're nurturing your data and relationships, it's a different ball game. And then the fifth one was, as we mentioned before, recruitment. Well, the people that we had recruited within our business in the last 24 months, which I could count on one hand, and we lost double that in attrition. So like you said, GT, you recruit 20 and you retain 5. That's exactly right. But those people, in speaking to all of them, I said, why did you join us? And it wasn't because of the brand, it was because of myself, my business partner. So when I looked at this EXP model, for me to be able to drive recruitment, it's not about Chris Jansen at the top of the door. It is, I'll recruit, I'll mentor you, I'll guide you and nurture you because you're attracted to me because it's what I'm doing. I've got the runs on the board. But I'm going to help you with all the other 4 points with making a client a priority through the brand being you and you only. We're going to give you cutting edge world-class systems and retention. Well, I'm going to retain you because I'm going to add value to your name, your brand.
So on that take, Dan, whilst you've come to seminars of mine and but never been a client. So this is not you just preaching, because we've been mates. In fact, we've been mates and kind of colleagues at an external level. But you've been to seminars, but never been a one-on-one client. And I wanted to, I suppose, get almost an outsider's perspective on what you've seen about what Chris said. You've seen some of my students, because you might have been at a seminar some years ago, and you saw what happened when people sitting in the audience beside you went and implemented those things. How do you think that, agent being the important brand, as long as it's supported by a strong brand, John McGrath wrote a book called You Inc. How do you think that ethos fits in with what we're doing? And in particular, some of the stuff that you've seen us implement, how that fits in with that You Inc. philosophy?
Well, I think it's all about resources and money, to be honest. It just comes down to that. Principals have been put in a position where, even if they do have that attitude, and I think most principals do have an attitude of wanting to promote and support their staff. They see logic in that, and most good principals come from that same cloth where they get a sense of achievement out of growing their staff and seeing them achieve. I think that's the reason why a lot of people go into business. But it gets down to resources. If the resources aren't there, because the commission, balance is not there after the expenses to spend on salespeople, it doesn't get spent. The principal quite rightly wants to make a living as well. And I think with the EXP model, the salespeople get such a large proportion of that commission that, it becomes a matter of us to help guide them on how to spend it.
Yeah.
How to spend it on marketing wisely and whether to hire a PA and how to hire a PA and what type of PA to hire and, how to basically grow You Inc., grow their business within a business, wisely, based on experience, and how to, leverage themselves into a better position using, both digital and print media. So I think it creates that opportunity where I think more and more in the standard business model that opportunity's been lost to some degree because the margins have been squeezed so much.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you can't be sitting there as a salesperson getting even 60% of the comm and then, out of the remaining 40 or 30 or whatever the principal. I remember I had a meeting with Phil Harris. It wasn't a meeting. We were sitting around having pizzas and beers. It was Phil Harris, Matt Steinwade, Chris Gilmore and me sitting around a pizza shop having a beer and a pizza. And they weren't talking about listing and selling. They weren't talking about vendors and VPA. They were talking about the margin left over on a typical salesperson if they weren't listing and selling themselves. And those margins were tight. And those three brains are no slouches. They are three of the smartest humans in the game. And when they were saying that, that the margins are becoming almost undoable, it was a really interesting discussion. And I was honoured to be that fourth wheel sitting there with that discussion there. I probably could have sold my seat for 10 grand to sit at that table for those couple hours. Yeah.
I think the question that principals will be asking is they say, well, okay, if the salespeople are going to get all the money, how do I make a quid in this EXP business?
It's a good question.
And it is based on volume. It's based on having a lot of agents under your mentorship, and they're not, it's not like a standard office where you're seeing them every day. You've come up with an approach to mentoring them using technology, and EXP World is a terrific example of that. And having them under your mentorship and earning a small fee and that fee being multiplied up, over 100 or 200 agents makes it worth your while. But so you've got to have an appetite, as I said before, to do that. and that's not for everybody. But for principals who are into mentoring and growing people and are willing to sort of do that with a lot of agents, it's a great opportunity for them.
Further to kind of what Dan was saying about that is, here's one of the growth things. As Dan was saying, it is about volume in order to take the majority of salespeople. So the first thing to note is that I'm choosing, as is Chris, as is Dan, as is Lisa, as in Adrian Bo. There are many of us who are choosing to adopt that principal mentorship role. But the reward, the sales overrider, that cascading multi-tiered revenue structure thing, that system, it's not reliant upon you mentoring. Sure, it might be in your best interest to make sure they're happy and things, but there is enough training at an EXP level, or, again, if you're talking to any one of the three of us, there's enough training because they get my mentorship and my full training, my suite of products. The people prior to this was paying up to $50,000 a year for. They get that gratis, free, as part of EXP. So if you're thinking, oh, but I'm not much of a trainer, all you've got to do is, it's happening naturally. People are seeing what our guys are doing, hearing all about it and joining, nominating you as their kind of person within EXP, and you are then rewarded with that person as part of your team monetarily. And that's what I'm loving seeing right now. At the moment, we are seeing people that are now part, like Mike Lowry. Chris came into EXP. I'd never met Mike Lowry before. I love his name, man. You can tell. Keep saying it. Yeah. I'd never met Mike before. And now, when Mike succeeds under Chris's mentorship, I get a small clip of the ticket. So it is about that volume and how now, and here's the thing for principals that I'd urge you to take away from this, because I've started to see it here and we're only weeks into this. Like literally it was maybe 6 weeks ago that Chris and I first talked, and Chris was one of the first people I talked to. And same with Dan. And so given how early we are seeing the curve, just like in America, go like that. And so here's the thing to think about. Many of the principals that I spoke to in America, they call them brokers over there, they said to me, sure, their splits had to go down by a little bit. But what they then effectively had was a recruitment force of X amount of people. Say you've got 10 people in your organization. You've now got 10 sets of eyeballs and ears out there and 10 mouths out there actively, not passively, but actively looking for dissatisfied salespeople in other organizations, and they are aplenty, I can promise you. And so your recruitment potential, your recruitment, let's say, funnels into your world have now 10x'd by, and that 10 is however many people say you're a principal that has a little sales force of 3 people. Well, now instead of just you being in charge of being a recruiter, you've now got you plus 3 others who are equally incentivized to recruit for the overall company, and you all are rewarded justly. So instead of that, like with many of the big organizations, Century 21, and this is not to begrudge any of the Remaxes or the Century 21s or the Ray Whites or any of them, but that little 10% or whatever it is clip of the ticket off the top, that goes to some nameless, faceless USA or whatever corporate identity. In this case, they're rewarding Chris. They're rewarding Mike Lowry, who is now a recruiter for Chris. But at the same time, he's a recruiter for himself. And that, I think, is the magic of that system. But what would you say about how that, I suppose that multiple arms and having those different sets of eyes now out there on your behalf, Chris?
Mate, unreal. I did my own numbers personally on my own GCI. And as I mentioned earlier, my GCI had reduced over the last year to 2 years, and I didn't feel at my full capacity. And that was essentially I was taking home less, mate, and it was affecting home life. And, because you were sort of bounced from pillar to post, running all sorts of things within your business. But, yeah, so I looked at the numbers commission-wise, and as a business owner, I couldn't even pay myself the same splits and what I could earn in gross to this, because obviously I had to leave a certain amount of, I guess, value in the business to keep things ticking along. So for me, it was low costs, low subscriptions, getting the same technology. I could actually pay myself more on this model and earn more. Like I'm talking 6 figures more a year, GT. We're not talking like, we're not talking 5 figures. I'm talking it would equate to 6 figures more to my group certificate and household income. So from a commission-only perspective, it was a no-brainer from what I could even pay myself as a business owner to this model. The second thing, obviously, the hardest thing any business owner has is, if you're being bought out of a business and you're leaving behind an asset, that's my risk to be had. But I've still got the opportunity where I can still organically grow something myself anyway and have 100% ownership of it. So I've got the structure in place for that to happen. And eventually, if guys and girls come in under my team, I'll put some incentive parameters in there that will help them build a rent roll if they want. It's not just, here's your letting fee, thanks for the $3,000 asset, and here's $600 in rent for the fortnight as a letting fee. So, the asset, to build an asset within the business was a great incentive as well. But to then also have actually ownership, with within EXP through the shares and so forth. But, I thought, well, I'm giving up an asset, but I'm also reinvesting into an asset. Plus I can still build another asset on the side myself. So it was a double whammy, or triple whammy. I could pay myself more commission. I could still build my rent roll and nurture that. And I could help guys and girls do the same and nurture them by mentoring them to build their own rent roll and not just flick them a letting fee. Plus I can reinvest in some shares for myself within this business as well.
And in many ways, I mean, look at that. Mate, I tell you bring that up because there is the opportunity if you wanted to buy shares at a discounted rate because they are trading on. And again, there's all of that. You have to say whenever you're talking about shares, there's a disclosure document. So that's all there, that disclosure document. But the essence of it is, we don't do all that because that's the thing. I don't know anything about shares. All I know is they give them to you as part of your remuneration package. They are gifted as a reward for the activities that we would do anyway. And that's never happened in real estate before. Both for, I mean, they give you like, and again, at the time of this recording, $600 in shares twice a year, just for standard sales performance, plus the sheer volume of shares they give you if you hit that icon agent status. And we've just had our first person within 6 weeks of joining EXP hit icon agent status. So that means for the rest of this financial year, they are on 100% commission and they are gifted their share. Mate, it's just, I mean, I'm not here to repeat the offering you saw on that other video that I'm sure everyone's watched, but boy, oh boy, 6 weeks in and they're proud to be the first ones to hit the cap. It's the Hardens. I was just left their office today. And, it's quite incredible that opportunity, especially when you factor in that icon status where, and it's all explained in that last video where those shares at that huge stake are gifted to you. You don't even have to buy them if you don't want to because they're gifted. Even if you wanted to, but again, the Hardens, they're all in because they're buying them at the discounted rate and all of that stuff. So and I don't understand anything about shares. Like I'm not a shares guy. I just think bloody hell, it sounds like a no-brainer to me. But so it seems like we have lost our Dan. But mate, I suppose in closing, not that we've done a whole bunch of one-on-one stuff as yet, but what would be your take on? I suppose, the conglomerate of internal mentors when you talk about, we did a session for a couple hours the other night with Adrian Bo, you get my full program and all of that. Often with these models where they are heavy in the agent's remuneration, it's up to them to go, because I know that because they're the ones that used to pay me 50 grand a year. They're paid 70 or 80% or whatever the case may be. So they feel it's up to them to get their own training. So hence I built a business on that. What's your take on the quality and availability of, the Glens of this world, Naomi, Lisa, Adrian, the internal training that will be afforded to both, a principal licensee watching this and any of his staff that will be coming in?
You guys are animals. You work at like incredible hours, insane hours. Like when I am up putting a contract together at 10:30 at night and I think, I've just got to check this off with GT or Naomi. You don't expect a response. It's like immediate. The power, and I think, look, there's coaching is expensive. I mean, I know this as a business owner. I used to pay the coaching bill, and there's some awesome coaches out there. And but the thing is, a lot of agents don't implement, and you look at the expense and how many of them implement. But what you give as to, and I think this is the way it's all going now, is I can mentor someone in a listing live. I can mentor someone at a contract negotiation live. But as to actually pumping out someone's brand, and we mentioned it before, by branding you, it's about you as the agent. Most principals are behind the eight ball in my marketplace in being able to help an agent brand themselves. And this is where the attrition is so high in that first year and a half, where most don't make it, is because the principals of an era that they just don't know how to actually social proof them and socially brand them, because they're not up to speed with that technology. And mate, you've invested, I think, 10,000+ hours into this stuff, as you mentioned, and the content that I've seen, it's a click and play away. Now, obviously I still need to implement, but it is so readily at my fingertips. It's more information that I have readily available to me than what I had before as a business owner. That's how insane it is, mate.
And you are with one of the ones that provides better training than most. I tell you, because I have a great deal of respect for the academy and for your CEO that you mentioned before. You know, but you know what? Although it is kind of like you mentioned before, I have a great deal of respect for the people in your former organisation, because the organisation, who cares? But the people that provide the training, the people that provide the academy, the person that is the CEO in Mike, he's a great bloke, you know, and he's one of the few CEOs who actually gives a shit about the industry as a whole, not just his own brand. I've never seen such a selfless individual. So the strength of the offer that would have pulled you away from that, and I understand the frustrations that were thrust upon you from an industry level. I get it, just pressure, market pressure on seemingly from every direction. And I'm glad that this has been seen as, I suppose, a way that we use scale and economy and all of those things that are out of technology, economies of scale, etc., to relieve that pressure. You know, because heaven forbid, what are these other guys going to do when and if the pressure of fees comes also from the consumers? Because if they think they're feeling pressure from consumers now, think again. You know, you haven't seen nothing yet because we are still, even if you are doing it at say 2% of a $500,000 property. Well, what is that? That's $10,000 in commission. And most consumers have never paid $10,000 for anything anywhere that isn't buying a car or an asset of some description. Like, as far as services is concerned, even if you are, heaven forbid, dropping your pants and doing it for $2,000, that's still the most amount of money that consumer has probably ever paid to anyone for anything in their life. So you think you've seen pressure on fees to date. You ain't seen nothing that potentially could happen. So even if you were feeling it before with fees as good as they are you future-proofed? And, you know, I would question potentially maybe whether we are not, you know. But all right, so Dan has found a way to join us back in. Here comes Dan.
Here he comes.
I think we've got him back. Is Dan back, mate? You had a bit of trouble there, my man. Let's turn that cam on, bud. Let me just ask to start video. Dan Nayland rejoins the stream live from the Sunshine Coast. Hey, mate.
Hey, mate. How are you?
We lost you there for a minute. I'm not sure if you remember where your train of thought was, but I think it was on recruiting and volume, and I expanded with a few thoughts of my own. But were you mid-thought when we lost you there?
No, I was just going into the McDonald's drive-thru. I had to turn you off for a minute.
Jesus. Well, I'm glad it was the high priority stuff. Look at the life Dan's living. People remember you, Dan, as the thorough, consummate, multi-seven-figure professional business owner. And now look at you, big smile on your face, loving life, going through McDonald's, getting a burger.
No. Look, if an old dinosaur like me can keep up with the technology, so can anybody.
What I like about Dan is Dan's, you know, quite a humble dude, in that I remember Dan and I talking years ago and about him being so innovative. And let's chat a little bit about innovation and kind of maybe some specifics if you've got any commentary on it. But Dan was saying how he led the way in his marketplace when he innovated a DVD video listing presentation within his pre-listing kit and a few other simple, like a newsletter, that sort of thing. And that at the time was Dan kicking butt, being a thought leader. You know, so Dan, I identified that with you the other day, mate. That hasn't changed. It's just the activities of the thought leader, of the innovator, have changed. You know, what would be your comment on that and how that relates to, I suppose, what we're afforded to do or tools we're given within this opportunity?
Well, I think it augurs to how much more complicated and advanced professional real estate has got. You know, back then, if you did a colour newsletter every quarter and you did it consistently, you know, you were way ahead of the game. You know, and if you had a listing DVD for your listing presentation, mate, you know, that was cutting edge, you know. And actually, I still have that listing DVD, so I might even send it to you just for a real laugh.
Well, what we need to do, we need to update it because the principles have stayed the same. It's just that now we've got those video cards with the big screen. They open them up and they see still multimedia vision and things. So principles never change. Tactics based on those principles are the things that get updated. So, yeah.
Well, I think because of technology, you know, you can't do it yourself like you used to be able to as an agent. You know, you used to be able to, you know, facilitate a lot of these things yourself. Now you've got to be prepared to go outside your business to make these things happen. And again, under this model, you know, the funds are available to sort of recruit that if you need be, or it's probably available already within the EXP, you know, framework and within their platform.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. And so you guys sort of come, let's just explore a little bit of the mindset behind why you guys inevitably made this decision, because they're almost opposite, you know, in that Chris, you know, give us your stay. You were, you know, sort of make this real crystal clear of where you were, business owner, and
Yep.
what you had to do and what you were leaving behind, and maybe the overall of why you did it. Because Dan is the opposite. Dan sort of, as he mentioned before, is kind of taking it slow and taking advantage of the fact that EXP will cut you some slack and understands with that agility you mentioned before and let you kind of get in, but take your time in unraveling and unscrambling the eggs that you've sort of scrambled over the past decade, perhaps. But how about yourself, mate? Because I'm in awe, Bud, of how you came to the decision and what you were walking away from.
Yeah, well, mate, you know, I could have easily come from a place of being content and complacency, and you know, could have signed another franchise deal and put my ink on the paper as such. And
because you were a director, you were a director, you're a partner, you owned the rent roll, you were in balls and all, you were pot committed.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Yeah, and then, but look, it happened, you know, from a personal level quite some time ago, and you know, I started having some close people around me that sort of started saying, Chris, you don't seem yourself. And you know, it gets to a point that when your wife starts saying that to you, you think, okay. And then COVID hit, and then you had some time to actually be more present and focus on your family, and you know, start leveraging on the technology to be at home and have more of a balance. I was never a principal where I wanted to write, you know, $2 million and it's my name. I was more so, I would prefer to coach someone and mentor them how to have a life balance. That was me. I'd love to just hook up my caravan and go away for a week and, you know, work 6 weeks, 7 days a week, whatever's required between those 6 weeks. But for me, it was, personal reasons, because when close stakeholders to me were saying, you're not yourself, and I wasn't, I'd lost my passion. As I said, I was doing 10 different things and I was only doing them probably 50% as good as what I could do them, because I was so spread. I was spread so thin across the business that when COVID hit and I had that time to reflect, it made sense why those closest, that inner circle to me, were saying, Chris, you haven't been yourself for quite some time. I went, shit, you can only look yourself in the mirror for so long when you realize and go, they're right, because I'm not doing one thing I'm really passionate about. I'm doing 10 things because it's just a responsibility as me as a director to do that. So you know, it questioned partnerships as well, self-reflection and happiness, and you know, so that was really the crux of it all, I guess, at the end of the day, mate. And
well,
this
either this has fixed it, or you're really good as a sociopath. Because to me, you've got your mojo back, but then maybe that's not the case, because we all campaign on a smile temporarily. So how is it now? Like, are you somewhere mid healing, or is this reignited something in you? And the Chris we see with a freaking grin on his face every time I see you, are you sort of back? And has your family noticed, or where are you at in that space?
Well, they are, mate. They've said, you know, my wife said I'm more present. I seem more passionate about what I'm doing, because I'm just focusing on listing and selling at the moment. And, you know, when I lost a mentor recently, I realized the gaps that were in my business. And it's not until that you're exposed that you realize those gaps and you go, geez, that's not what I stand for. That's not my delivery on service and expectations. So, you know, I've had an opportunity to close those gaps now and get back to some basics. And I'm doing stuff like, you know, doing bank valuations and getting back out there on settlement days to greet the purchaser at the property. Whereas before I wasn't doing that stuff, just that personal connection stuff. But definitely, mate, I feel reinvigorated. I feel replenished. I feel charged. I'm more optimistic and excited about this than being a complacent business owner that I was.
Wow,
and
man.
The inner circle that are coming on board with me as well. It's amazing. Like, we got guys coming from other brands and we've known of each other for a long, long time now. We are sharing more wins and more success than people did internally within our business.
Wow, mate. You know, actually, mate, that reminds me, and make sure if I don't remember that on one of the upcoming trainings, because we do a weekly skills session, and we've got this module called Make Buyers Cry. And when you said about delivering on settlement day, we've got this system that is so emotionally powerful that we've had buyers several times in tears with gratitude at the real estate agent. And think about this. This is buyers who were on the other side of the negotiation for the whole thing. So it's almost like we're representing the sellers. We've had buyers crying with how thoughtful this system is. So make sure we do that, because if you're sort of liking getting back into that, delivering the keys, high-fiving the sellers and all of that stuff, you're going to love that little module that we've got, mate. So we'll get to that. And Dan, you know, what would you add to that? Because, you know, you've gotten to know Chris over the past period of time, and even tonight, you saw that he was someone who kind of closed up shop and moved away. But yet, you know, you mentioned it sort of in passing before, how you've been able to take your time and be a little more methodical with your approach, because there's sort of a bit more well, maybe not a bit more to undo, but there's properties that you own, there's premises that you've got, and there's a multiple 7-figure business that is sitting there. And yet, you know, you mentioned that EXP have been flexible in understanding that and letting you sort of do it at your pace.
Yeah. Look, they absolutely have, and I think it's really wise of them to take that position, because it allows established people to make that transition. You know, it takes 20 years to build a business. You can't just throw it to the wolves. But you know, I think I really relate to what Chris is saying, because, you know, in some ways I have the same feelings, where if you've been successful in real estate and you're financially secure, one of the best things, particularly as you get older, is to be able to get back to doing the things in life, whether it's out of work or in your work life, that you enjoy. And if you enjoy it and you're getting a real sense of achievement out of it and joy out of it and satisfaction out of it, you'll continue to do it for a lot longer. And look, I'm a person who doesn't believe in retirement. I think once you retire, you age really quickly, you know. And I'm still out surfing, and I'm going to the gym, and I've got a 19-year-old to keep up with, and I'm enjoying all that. But you know, one of the things with EXP, it brings me back to, certainly I believe in selling, leading from the front, as sort of Chris is. You know, he's out there selling, listing, and so am I, and I'm enjoying that. But also, you know, it puts me squarely in that position where I'm mentoring people, I'm helping them build their own new business under their brand or under my brand, it won't matter.
You haven't even talked about that. The complete flexibility that the agents who come in have the choice of, like Chris has got there in his thing, he can be EXP kind of derivative. You can have your own brand completely, or somewhere in between with a powered by EXP or in association with EXP, kind of a dual branding situation.
Yeah, you can have whatever you like. And I think that's one of the strengths, you know, like one of my people that's just starting, she's now been on Facebook, you know, and she's been putting out these different brands, you know, to decide, you know, what she wants to do. And I've been able to comment and be part of that. And, you know, that's the exciting part, I think, of real estate. And you can sort of be part of that for lots of people. And you can also pass on the mistakes that you made and, you know, help them avoid those and make that transition easy for them, which people really appreciate, you know. And I think, you know, you forget what you know, you forget, don't know what you do automatically.
True.
And you know, you can just pass those things on so seamlessly, and people get so much from it, and enjoy the process, and not be bogged down with the HR and the taxes and the payrolls and all the other stuff that you know is sort of spoils it for you in a way, you know. And look, you know, there could be principals out there that love all that stuff, and if you do, well, you're better than me, you know. I've been doing it for a long time, and I still don't like it. But
I mean, like, you know, cash flow analysis, what spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Oh, just get me in a lounge room, please.
And you know, I'll tell you another interesting situation that's evolved, and this is going to be interesting for salespeople. Is principals make their living out of salespeople's performance, right? So if the salesperson doesn't perform, or a group of them don't perform, you don't pay the bills. Right?
Or you are forced to list and sell like a trooper yourself on 0% commission.
Yeah, that's
some principals where they talk about splits, and they've said, mate, I'm on the greatest split ever, 0-100, because all my commissions go to keep the doors open.
Yeah. So as a principal, if you think about the process of you month in, month out happening, you know, it's great if your salespeople are performing really well, but if they're not, and you're having to drive that all the time, year in, year out, that's very, very taxing. It's very taxing. And you know, in my business, I've had some years where I haven't had to, and it's been fantastic. And I've had many years where I've had to all the time. And you know, it's not a great place to be. And under the EXP model, as a leader or a mentor, it's your role to help them. But at the end of the day, they've got to be willing to do it themselves. And it's not going to be financially taxing on a principal if they don't perform. You know, so the approach to the how you help them is completely different, because your living isn't really going to be completely dependent on their high level of performance.
You know, I've only just noticed now, Dan, and of course Chris, there's an inherently adversarial relationship, even if it's positive, between most principals and their salespeople. And I've just noticed that is non-existent within this structure. There is no zero-sum game where it's a net win-loss between principal and their person. Even if, because, you know, like I did, well, I was brought in by Michael Spillane, so I love Michael. But for every percentage point that is in his favour, that's one less that's not in mine, and vice versa. So it's like there's almost an inherently adversarial situation in the historic incumbent model. And I've never even realized it till now, but that's absolutely the opposite here. Like, literally, I want everyone to kill it, because as everyone kills it, the shareholding goes up. When I first looked into this, because I did 2 years of due diligence in this, Dan thought he was thorough doing a couple of months, hardcore studying and figuring out why is it not too good to be true, or why is it. That was 2 years for me. I went to America to figure out, can't be this easy, can't be this good, can't be this agent-centric. And this, you know, so I went, saw Brian Casella in his office in Southern California, who has no reason to fib to me, because he's not part of the EXP, you know, business that I'm involved in. So it meant nothing to him financially if I joined or not. And I spent a day in his office looking under the hood, trying to find that's where they get you. And they just don't. You know, it amazed me that, you know, and so, when I was looking at that, it was $3 a share at the time, $3. And when I first spoke to Dan about this, it was $8 a share, a couple, you know, maybe 6 weeks ago. And as of today, go Google it and have a look. EXP World Holdings, just have a look for yourself at what it is trading at today. It's stunning that possibly that's why, is that if we do all own shares and we do all, you know, we don't have those pressures that Dan's talking about as far as cost is concerned on salespersons. Why don't you perform? Principals, why don't you provide more for me? All of that adversarial ick, I suppose, I can't think of a better word than ick. With all that gone, maybe that is why, you know, that it's working so well, and the curve kind of salespersons. You know, if the best objection to not join is it's too good to be true, then I think we're in pretty good shape for us who know that the the rumors are true. So it's pretty good.
I think if you're willing to do, look, there's always going to be the work to be able to mentor. You've got to be willing to mentor a whole group of people and help them build their business. If you're not willing to do that, well, then of course you're not offering enough. The biggest thing with the EXP model that I think we've talked about too, Glenn, is to ensure that people feel well supported. A lot of there is a cost for the salespeople. They're after they sell their first 4 million, then they're on 100% of the fee. So there is a cost for the benefit of that, and that cost is that they have to do significant training to really learn some technology. Just like any doctor has to, and just like even a mechanic who services a Mercedes these days has to do. Gone are the days where you can get by without learning tech. And if you're not willing to do that, well, then a salesperson has to hire someone, which they'll have the money to do. They'll have a big split of the fee. They'll be able to hire a PA to do it for them, and that's cool. But they're also going to want that support that they are normally accustomed to having from a standard office. And that means for me, I've got to be there to mentor them, to give them some guidance on solving some solutions and some things. And that's cool because that's what I became a principal to do. It's all the other stuff that I don't want to do anymore.
Fair enough, mate. And Chris, what was your due diligence like? Dan and I put him through the ringer, including me traveling over, because I had a couple of, I had a multiple 7-figure coaching business that I potentially put at risk by aligning myself, even though this is a brandless brand in that people can be independents or they can be their own brand kind of thing. But by aligning with any one organization, I put that coaching business at risk. So I took a couple of years between when I first heard about it and started doing due diligence to when Australia was launched. In some cases, the CEO tells me my nagging him to start was quite prevalent in them doing Australia first before Mexico. So that's nice. They've got some lunatic in Australia wants to go crazy, so fair call. But it took me a long time to get that decision made where I was satisfied that it wasn't too good to be true. What was your due diligence process like, bud?
Look, I'm a bit of a thrill seeker. I like being out of my comfort zone. I like the unknown and then turning it and flipping into the known. So change is not something I'm scared of. But look, there was a model GT that I was pretty close to signing to. Area specialist Michael Choi.
I'm a big fan. I've known Michael for a decade. I have so much respect for him. Great guy.
Fan. Awesome guy, man. And I looked at his model a while ago and I was like, that's the one. And then I had some alliances with agents in the state here. And, we all sort of had that handshake agreement. Yet if someone does it, someone takes that leap, we're on board. And I was like, I'll be the guinea pig. No problems. Yeah. But then obviously Bjorn became aware of EXP and started to talk to me about it. And EXP was so adaptive. This is what I love about the model. It's transparent, right? There's no deal. So if you're that big gorilla in the corner of the office, you get that deal just to keep you quiet. But you only turn over X amount of GCI. We can't offer you that same deal. That's a real tough conversation for any principal to have. And there used to be this, conversations in the office. No one should talk remuneration because it's confidential and it's private. Well, here, this is my deal. This is what I'm on because everyone's on that. So there's no awkward conversations. But yeah, and the thing with EXP is they were so adaptive. They said, just plug in, like don't commit, just plug in and have a look. So I did. So I plugged in a few months ago and I started playing and it was really unknown and it became really known quickly. The only probably biggest adjustment I've had is going from an Exchange server with Outlook to Google. That's been the hardest part. And REA forms versus RESA Live forms that I used to use. They have been my two biggest hurdles that I've just had to retrain myself on.
Wow, man.
Not that difficult.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting. Speak about Michael Choi. And there's a bunch of brands, I suppose, out there that now, like even some of the incumbent players, have you noticed in the last 2 weeks, 2 out of the incumbent players have changed their models in response to us launching? Like, it's like, well, if you could have done it then, why didn't you do it then? But they still can't unscramble many of the eggs to match it no matter what they do. But I tell you, I'm a fan of Michael. In fact, Michael was the first person I spoke to about EXP, the first.
Yep.
Second was
Yeah.
Adrian Bo. And,
Yep.
and so Michael, the reason he didn't join was because he's building his own deal, and good luck to him because he is a genuine human being who's having a crack.
Yeah.
You know, good bloke.
Look, he'll do super well, mate. And I was really impressed with what I've seen. But you know, the power of a few forces aligning here in the state, you know, resonated with me. And I thought, well, we've got an allegiance there immediately. It's more signboards, it's more attraction. Whereas I would have been solo with a bit of an interstate model. So it would have taken more momentum out of my business to get up and running over time, I guess. But you're right, mate. Those same models you were talking about, sure, they were on the phone when they caught wind of the direction Bjorn and I were going, and they were throwing deals at us. And I just went, well, why is that a deal now? But it wasn't back when you were first speaking to us. Like, it's a bit fishy. Whereas EXP, it's like, this is a deal from day one, and that doesn't change. Like, that's what we offer you, and that's what we offer 30 other thousand agents in the States.
Yeah.
There's no deals.
Yeah.
But,
Well, and that's the thing.
Morally and
The
ethically,
deal
that
is
sits right with me.
And the deal itself is too good a deal that everyone's on the deal. It's not that there's no deals. It's just that everyone's on the gorilla deal.
And look, you know, to
Yeah.
me, it offers a lot more security because it's a multi-million dollar business. You know, the EXP Wealth software alone costs $12 million just for that software. You know, so it offers a lot more security. It's not going anywhere, and that's what I like about it. You know, it's going to grow and grow because it's grown so much already in the States, and it's opening in the UK, as you know.
Yeah, well, we've got our first, Dan, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Lisa just introduced someone. So her revenue share now extends to the UK. And Mel B has been in, you know, she joined us a week and a half ago, and she just introduced someone from Canada. Yeah. So actually, because I never thought of that, Dan, and that's a good point in that when you're doing, when you're putting together a company like that, where you are not, like, I'm not being paid a wage by EXP. None of us are on a wage. We're all just members, just like everyone else. Like you say, there's no deals. I don't get a deal. I'm not paid a penny to say any of this other than the same remuneration that anyone can get to help work the system, I suppose. Yeah. And imagine if we did that gratis, like no pay, no wage, no nothing. You need to have, I suppose, a company that you know is going to be around to pay you for your upfront work now. Yeah. You know, that if it's not, you know, Dan, I never even thought about that. The fact that they have no debt and they are worth what they're worth. Yeah, we kind of need to make sure that it's still there because all our work is paid for free in the recruiting process. And, you know, so that's a good point that you made.
Well, I was really amazed to see that it's transferable, you know, so that, you know, if you build a big business and at a later time I want to give it down to my absolutely gorgeous daughter, Imika Nayland, if you want to check her out on Instagram. She's a bit of an Instagram influencer in real estate. But if I ever want to pass it down to her, I can. It allows for that, and that's pretty cool too, I think. You know?
Yeah, wow. And it's isn't it funny you said the word influencer then, Dan? When we first met back in whenever it was, maybe 2012 or something, we were teaching agents to be influencers before there was a word influencer. True. Like we used to say, you know, you've got to become famous in your local area. We've got to become like a rock star. Literally, you can't walk down the street without being noticed. And we were preparing for the word influencer before it existed. We used to say, you know, celebrity. You had to have the power of celebrity in your business.
The authority in the marketplace.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. So no, look, guys. Hey, thanks for jumping on. I know, Dan. You know, you've just gone through the drive-through and you've got a burger to swallow. and Chris, thanks for jumping on again. I know we've got to do this again because it's great having these exchanges of ideas because it's good for all three of us, you know, and all of us to sort of hear and sort of the rest of EXP and even people who are watching this outside to get a take not only from, I suppose, you know, because I'm enthusiastic, people might understandably see, oh, he's a salesperson, you know, he's a pitch man or whatever. But I love hearing the real life stories, even though I am very genuine, absolutely. I can't help being enthusiastic, but I don't want people to mistake that enthusiasm for hiding something. It's just, it took a lot for me to sort of say a transition from coach to everyone to sort of putting up a bit of a wall and saying, if you're on this side of the wall, you get me. If you're on that side of the wall, well, you either don't get me or you pay a pretty penny to get me. You know, so it took a fair bit for that to be the case. So I can't help but be enthusiastic about it because I've never seen anything like this in 20 years in the business. So I'm fired up about it. But I love hearing the real life, real stories from, again, successful business owners like yourself. Like you guys aren't, I mean, Chris, you mentioned you're a bit of a risk taker and all of those things, but you're still no dummy. You're still not just out there punting your family's future on a whim and a prayer without some thought being behind it. So it's great to hear some of these thoughts from you guys.
Yeah. And look, I'm not a risk taker. I look at things. Well, maybe I was, Chris, when I was maybe your age. But not so much now. I've got plenty to lose, but less of a risk taker and a little bit more analytical. But more so, I can see the writing on the wall. One thing I've had a skill in is always being able to recognise change when it's coming, and I can feel it coming. That there's this disgruntlement in the industry. It's been there for a long time. It's the relationships are not like they were. It's screaming for change, and along comes something like this where everyone can be moving in the same direction and back working together strongly and confidently. I can really see this taking off in a big way, and I felt the need to be involved in it. I didn't want to be left behind. So I think it's something people have to think about, and I will say, the borders in Queensland are open to New South Wales and everywhere but Victoria, and there's no better place to contemplate this idea than on Noosa's main beach. So just come on up, have a think about it.
The consummate salesman. I love it. Yeah. Hey, I love it. But you know what? Hard to disagree because I'm a former Sunshine Coast resident myself, and the only reason I am not still there is my children. When their mum moved, I had to, but that is the only reason I am not still Dan's neighbour up there. It is God's country, I tell you.
Yeah. So, and I assure you, what you see behind me is not the weather here in Adelaide. I'm not jumping in that pool, that's for sure.
That's more like Noosa, that there. That looks like one of Dan's listings.
Exactly, mate. Maybe I'm in your backyard. You don't know.
Next time I'll have one of those behind me. I'm going to get that professional.
Yeah.
Guys,
one of the things,
just
GT, real quickly, I was just going to say, whilst I do take risk and, I'm not a thrill seeker, I mean, obviously, like you said, GT, I'm not going to put my family in a position, and I do look at the balance sheet and my bottom line, but I've always been a true believer, if you surround yourself with the right people, the rest will take care of itself, and I feel more closely aligned to this inner circle so far that's very tightly held and closely knit and great support. That to me is more important than anything. I think if you align yourself with the right people, you'll go places. And this model, it doesn't matter what a person next to me does, it doesn't affect my business.
Yeah, well, only in a positive way. Only in a positive way.
The risk is minimal to me. Yeah. Because I'm in control of my business. What I do, I don't do affects me. But if I can surround myself with great people like you guys, and we can recruit and offer transparent deals like we've spoken about, it's just a no-brainer. You're going to create a powerful circle of people.
Yeah, I'm honoured to have the circle of influence around me that we've started with. I've spoken to less than 100 people about this. It's been very, it's maybe 70, and for 48 to have joined out of 70, that's incredible. And, like that's never been done in real estate, in the history of real estate. I used to recruit for a living. Chris, you mentioned those sorts of numbers, that the amount of people I used to have to interview to start the 5, to keep the 1. It was ludicrous. Never has it been more people say yes to an opportunity to join an opportunity than say no. Never happened ever. And, and really and I can't even discount the people who said thanks, but no thanks, because they're building their own journey and they're building their own brand. Like literally they're, like in the case of Michael, in the case of, some of the other folks, Maria and Manos are another one. I adore those two people from eView, and they have their own offering. Like, I suppose, it's not a Harcourts, or it's not a Ray White, or it's not a corporate, but it's also a different offering than EXP, but you can't fault them for being, Glenn, all the best luck to you, but we're too far down this path and we love it. And so I wish them all the best, because those two people were two of the first 10 that I spoke to was Maria and Manos were in the first couple that I spoke to, as was Michael Choi. So, and you know, isn't that wonderful that we're an opportunity that is so universally seen as acceptable and not only acceptable but desirable, that the only reason to not do it is you're already doing it, but for you. You know what someone said when I was doing my due diligence from the States? He said, they just don't know everyone's going to be with EXP eventually. Now, he didn't mean with EXP. What he meant was EXP, and we've already seen the other brands adapting to effectively try and become their own version of it. That's what he meant. He meant if no matter who you're working for, if they don't become EXP-like in their philosophy, in their methodology, in some way, that they're not going to be around for someone to be with them. And that's what he meant by everyone's going to be with EXP, that they'll all have to adopt new technology, adopt the reality of economies of scale being ridiculous when there's 10 real estate agents in one strip of shops, you know, and so that's what he meant by that. And it's, Dan, you said it, you said the word that this is the model that, I can't remember the way you worded it, it'll be better than I said, but it was something like the agency or the brand or the something, the company that every agent needs to be with. I'm like, wow, that's bold, thinking that it should be everyone. But in many ways, why wouldn't it be when it's so flexible and so rewarding and agent-centric, I suppose?
Yeah, I just think it has too much to offer. Not to, you know, I can imagine, you know, the bigger it gets, I can just imagine the agents down the road thinking, well, what the hell am I doing here when I could be down there doing, you know, under that deal? It's a no-brainer. And you know, it's just if I was in any region of Australia and this was coming up, I'd be thinking, gee, I want to be the first to offer this under my brand, because I want my brand to grow, and I don't want another competitor's brand to grow under this model, and you know, I'm left sort of wondering what happened.
Well, what's going to happen is, and what we've seen in America, because I love this, that we've got the opportunity to get in the ground floor, you know, the first few people to have been exposed to this. Because if you're seeing this now, thank whoever sent it to you. I mean that. Thank them, because literally this is insanely good opportunity. In 3 years, because what we're seeing in America, I was looking into it 2017, 2018. That was 3 years ago as of now. And in those 3 years, so they're 3 years into our future, and they are still doing well and recruiting, but it is not as good. They are all the people in America that I spoke to said they would kill to have a clean slate with agents that the majority of them are on commission splits like ours are, when they've never heard of an opportunity like EXP. They are describing what we are in right now as the holy grail. And it's still good over there now. So what that tells me, potentially, is that if all things go the way they have in America, or even close to that, 3 years from now, this will be still the best deal in the game. But the one downside will be everyone will have heard of it. Everyone will know what the deal is, and recruiting won't be quite, you know, 2/3 or 1/3 or whatever it kind of is at the level of acceptance that it is now. It'll still be great. It'll still be the best opportunity. But right now, when we are dealing with virtually a clean slate, as Dan just said then, to me, that was the no-brainer, you know, one of the many no-brainers that I needed to make a decision that was life-changing for me. And these, you know, amazing gentlemen with me have done the same thing. So look, if someone's still watching after this hour, whatever it's been, they're in. So the only choice is you're going to call Dan Nayland on the Sunshine Coast. You're going to call Chris Jansen down in South Australia. And if you go with any of these gentlemen, you get me as your coach. You get every penny. You don't pay a penny. And everything that people in the past have paid up to $5,000 a month used to be my full one-on-one mentoring. Well, these guys have said already, and you know, we didn't mention it already, but Bjorn, who Chris has mentioned, he called me at 10:30 at night with a Facebook problem. I spent 2 hours on his Facebook account fixing his concern. And you know, you don't pay a penny for that, whereas historically people paid a lot for that. And no matter which of these two gentlemen you choose to have as your kind of direct mentor, you get me and everything that I offer as part of that. And so, you know, if you're still with us after all this, I know you're in. Congratulations on making that decision, because literally, you know, you're going to be one of the principles that is, like Dan is saying, the early adopter who gets the benefit of that curve that's looking like that, because it's already going we're at the start of that curve, and it's already tilting upwards with 5x of agent count in the last 6 weeks, 5 times, 500% growth in the last 6 weeks. So what that means, but it's still so early, there is still 40,000 real estate agents who have not heard of this opportunity. And that curve is going to be under you guys as early adopters. And, what a great opportunity that'll never come again. It'll never come again. So wonderful. So call Dan, call Chris. You'll be in very, very good hands. Guys, thanks for jumping on, man. It was awesome to hang for a little bit.
All right.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate the opportunity. Thanks,
All
Thanks,
Dan.
guys. To be continued.
boys.
We'll see you in the world.
Yeah.
See you guys later.
See you guys.